for that short and succinct brief designed to really set the scene for us here today. We're going to move swiftly on, as you said, to Ollie from SRK, the data man, so to speak. So, Ollie, the floor is yours. Let us know what's there. Thanks.
Many thanks. I'll just wait for my presentation to come up. But thanks, Francis, for that introduction. And yeah, in my talk, I'm just going to give a brief overview, very brief overview of the geology, the main metallogenic belts, and the main minerals that are found in Rwanda, and then just give a very brief overview of some of the exploration we've done, specifically looking at one of the projects, which is a lithium pegmatite project. So yeah, we've been involved in a number of projects in the last year, looking at sapphires. This is a pink sapphire here, gold, and also pegmatite minerals. So just to put it in context a little bit, Rwanda sits at the top of the Kibaran orogeny, in between the Congo Craton and the Tanzania Craton, one side and the other. And the rocks in the orogeny were actually formed as the Congo Craton and the Tanzanian Craton came together and formed a basin about 2 billion years ago. This basin was very stable and filled in with sediments and has undergone a small number of compressional events, one notably at 1.4 billion years ago, and then another 1 billion years ago. And it's this one that we're very much interested in for the tin, tungsten, and some of the gold mineralization within Rwanda itself. What happened was these two cratons, the Congo Craton and the Tanzanian Craton, came together, pushed up the sediments in between, creating a huge mountain range where Rwanda is now. And on relaxation of moving apart of those two cratons, a lot of granites were introduced into the origin, or into the mountainous belt, and it's those granites that were fertile and have brought in the tin mineralization and the associated mineralization. Yeah, so I guess I was just looking at the future of Rwanda, and although this area has been very stable for a long period, actually the East African Rift now goes along the western side of Rwanda, and the future for Rwanda is a nice cozy place on the coast, but you might have to wait a little while for that. Rwanda itself has got some great open source geological data. This is a countrywide metallogenic map, and basically there's three main deposit styles in the Kibara rare metal and gold province. There's the tin and tantalum pegmatite deposits. There's magmatic hydrothermal tin and tungsten vein deposits, which will be discussed a bit further by Piran next. And then some similar magmatic hydrothermal gold vein systems. I've just tried to highlight here the main tin zones. So Rutongo and Gatumba are the main zones within the country, but also you can see there's a number of other tin zones that have been identified. The green here are tungsten zones, and there's a tungsten belt cutting straight through the middle of the country there. And then the main gold occurrences are down in the south in Nyungwe. Just basically to have a very brief delve into some of the open source data that's available. Here we've got the same map with those zones put up there with the freely available tungsten stream sediment data, and you can see that yeah, most of the tungsten does fit in those known belts, but we've also got tungsten anomalies here that are way outside of known occurrences. And immediately when I look at that, and I also look at the tin, there's a similar story. As an explorationist, I'm like, well, you know, these areas need to be explored. What's causing those anomalies? Where's the mineralization? Have these been followed up? These are anomalies that have been known about for a while, but don't correlate to any of the known deposits. So for me, just looking at that very briefly, I'm like, well, we're in elephant country. Rwanda is one of the top producers of tin, tantalum in the world. And there's been work done historically that covers most of the country. And straight away, I'll be looking at, well, have those targets been looked at? What can we do there to actually follow those up? SRK carried out some work over 7 projects in 2018. These were selected by RMB, and we were there to look at the projects in detail, quite small areas, and advance them with exploration. Some of the notable ones were Nyiragongo, which is a pegmatite field, and then along a trend to the north, Ndiza, which is another pegmatite with tin and tantalum mineralization. And then down in this southwest corner with sapphire and gold mineralization, both projects that outline significant mineralization. Just going to focus on Nyiragongo briefly, and this is the potential target area that we were tasked with doing some exploration in. It's in the Katumba pegmatite field. This is one of the largest pegmatite fields in Rwanda. It's 20 kilometers across. It contains over 130 large, significant pegmatites, of which we just had a look, a very small look at, small number. The pegmatites themselves are related to 2 granite batholiths, Gitarama and Kabaya batholiths. And as in many pegmatite fields, as you move away from these source granites, the pegmatites themselves become more fractionated, with the most fractionated pegmatites furthest from the source, and these are the ones we're interested in. These are the ones that contain the interesting and economic mineralization, not only tin, tantalum, but also significant lithium, which has never been a target in historical exploration in Rwanda. So that PTA area was defined here, and we did extra mapping, identifying the main Katumba suite of pegmatites. This is just for scale 3 kilometers along strike, and then a number of additional pegmatites were identified and mapped to the north. Initial reconnaissance work found spodumene and amblygonite, which are both lithium minerals. The area was known to carry tin and tantalum mineralization, and one of the things we were tasked with is to have a look at lithium and see if there's potential for lithium mineralization in the area. This is sort of a trace of one of the trenches we did with a tantalum equivalent grade in Katumba. And then just to the north is the large, it's 100-meter wide Baranga pegmatite, which is a classic zone pegmatite with core quartz, feldspar, rich core zone, intermediate zones carrying a lot of the grade, and then a zone here which is muscovite rich and also tin rich. And a lot of the tin in these systems is related to later stage alteration and greisenization. So we did a number of trenches. The trenching came back with some good results, but there's a lot of areas where we couldn't actually get samples from, and these were due to really extensive surface workings, and we couldn't get down to the pegmatite itself. So there's definitely more work to be done here to understand the mineralization. As I mentioned, the Katumba pegmatite field itself is an amazing exploration target. We looked at 4 main pegmatites in the field, and there's over 130 there. And so this is the main Katumba pegmatite with the northern ones we mapped here. But there's a number of pegmatites that you can see from the road, large units that have been worked artisanally at surface. And there's no doubt as you're getting further from the granites, these are going to be mineralized. The Katumba pegmatite itself did have a resource calculated in 2009 for tin and tantalum, but it's not been systematically sampled for lithium. So basically, just to recap, Rwanda is one of the largest producers of tin, tantalum and tungsten in the world. It also exports gold and gemstones, and there is a number of exploration targets that need following up in the gold space, certainly. There's little systematic modern exploration, and certainly there's a lot of local mining companies who are mining at surface, but don't really have the size to explore in front of them. So no one's actually been there and looked through on a regional level to look for these big deposits, maybe deposits that aren't right at surface outcropping, and there's real potential there. Yeah, and if I can just look at a couple of maps and say, wow, look, you can see these geochemical anomalies that aren't even explained. It's amazing that companies are jumping in there and following these things up. Yeah, so that gives a sort of overview, and fairly bullish, but that's my opinion on Rwanda and the great potential it's got.
Thank you very much, Ollie.